Go ahead.
Welcome all of you. A very warm good morning to all the participants. I hope you had a nice faculty development program so far with the previous sessions. And this session is going to be about techno-economic analysis of energy systems. Primarily, it will be about techno-economic analysis. My name is Sonal and I'm an assistant professor at HRED IIT Roorkee. Thank you, Professor Pratham, for the introduction. So, as we see from the title, the techno-economic analysis. If we break down this term, it refers to the combined or integrated analysis of both the technical and economic factors associated with any project or product or a system. So, here. And if you read this sentence, technology is amongst the top key drivers of economic growth, but the mechanisms through which technology is developed, adopted, and used are complex. So it's true, right? This is about technology, and what about economics? Economics is even a dangerous science, like as said by John Keynes, a famous economist of 20th century known for Keynesian economics. In fact, technology and economy go hand in hand together. And economics is meant to simplify the complex problem so that we can make some decisions, we can take the decisions, we can make some solutions. But it itself is very complicated sometimes. So when these two things come together, we call it as techno-economic analysis. There is no like specific framework or agenda or a fixed set of rules for doing this techno-economic analysis. It can be done in diverse ways, and we'll be looking at like how this could be done in some of the best ways in this today's lecture. So let me first ask all of you, why do we need techno-economic analysis? I'm going to use this short form T throughout my lecture. It stands for techno-economic analysis or assessment. So if someone can help me like point out, why do we exactly need techno-economic analysis? Anyone?
Sir, actually it is done for social development and economic, for social economic development. So
Okay.
it is necessary for.
You said it's necessary for socio-economic development. Anything else?
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any first thing. Second one is easy to live anybody in the humans. That is the purpose.
Okay. So that's feasibility. And anything else? Like, why do we need techno-economic analysis? We usually do it for because we are dealing with energy systems. We deal with product, process, system, technology, right? So when it comes to all these things, what is the most important thing that people who are involved in these things need to take? The most important thing is the ability to make decisions. And to take any decision for a product, process, system, or technology in any sector, we need some basis. And if it's about technology, the techno-economic forms a strong basis which will help us to take some strong decisions with some rationale and logic. So if you look at this, so it's needed obviously to check the feasibility, as someone pointed out. if the process is economically feasible, it is required to establish a theoretical configuration. It means we can at labs we can do the experiments at like mini scale or micro scale, sometimes even at molecular scales, right? Chemical engineers and biological engineers will know it. So we can do experiments or research at a mini scale, or maybe we can go to a pilot scale, but beyond that it's not possible to do experimental tests. So in that thing, this techno-economics will be helpful to establish, okay, how this process could be scaled up or the capacity could be increased. And obviously, we need to estimate the cost associated with the process, determining the value of product, determining how we are going to build a plant. In fact, techno-economic analysis can not only be applied to a single entity, but it can also be used as a tool to compare or evaluate multiple alternatives. Okay, so most of the research papers, if you see these days, they do something like a base case or a reference case. And then we do techno-economic analysis for our system and then try to compare with the base case or reference case. And sometimes we need to compare it with multiple alternatives available, satisfying the same objective. But most important, overall, all these things help us to take certain decisions associated with the project. And decision maker can be anyone. Based on the person who is going to make decisions, the decisions will be varied, and hence techno-economic analysis will be different in different perspectives. So second question is, when do we need TA? Can someone please help me with like exactly when do we need this techno-economic analysis? Assume like you are developing, you're doing some research. Yeah, please.
Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Please, just please say your answer. It's fine.
Okay, sir. By help of techno-economic, very morning, sir. By help of techno-economic analysis, we can mapping our resources and input overall investment cost, especially for infrastructure, for establishment, for all setup required for that. And by help of this, we can identify overall output and the payback of the project, like total investment is required and how many we get by help of this project are running this system.
Okay.
So for this
Sir,
reason, maybe this is
yeah.
important for.
No, yeah, sir, that's the correct answer, but it was for a previous question. Why do we need TA? Now we are discussing when do we need techno-economic analysis? When is the best time to do the techno-economic analysis? At the start of the project, during the project, and it makes often to do it before or start, but now when we are dealing with energy systems, I would say techno-economic analysis could be done at any stage or development of the project. It can be done at almost any or every stage of development, right from early stage startups or to for fully fledged companies. In fact, even if we have like a say a chemical plant where like we have 10 reactor, like reactor 1, reactor 2, then maybe distillation column, cooling tower. So we can do techno-economic analysis of individual unit operation also. We can do the techno-economic analysis of the whole system. We can do it before installing or commissioning this plant. And in fact, we can do it during the plant, when the plant is in operation. Because unless the plant is in operation, we are not going to know about direct and indirect costs associated with the operation and maintenance of the plant. Right? So, but obviously, like, it makes sense to do it mostly before taking a decision. Like as we said, because techno-economic analysis is going to help us make a decision, it's better to do it before some process is done. But often the systems are very complicated and involves a lot of steps and stages. So in that case, it's difficult to visualize the whole setup beforehand. So a lot of times it is required even after the operations commenced, or even the project is complete, or even when we are going for seeking money from investors, this techno-economic analysis are required. So by definition wise, it can be done at almost any stage or every stage of development. But obviously the importance of doing that will vary based on the objective what we are seeking for. So this curve, if is like this is an investment and this is a technology readiness level developed. This was proposed by NASA. It is just taken as a scale to measure like a research idea till the commercialization stage. Like we have some basic principles, then technology proof of concept, and then we go for pilot scale or demonstration, which will be commercialized later. So I won't go into detail in this. This is also called as like valley of death, because as the academicians, what we are involved in mostly this, where we get the grants and funding from academic institutions or government. Some industries may also sponsor these projects. So there is some investment in these first 4 to 5 stages. And often the industries are concerned in investing only in those projects which have the ready prototype available. So for example, if in my PhD, I worked on a reactor of say like 100 ml. And then I just did some simulations and calculations for like say 100 liters. My experimental setup was of 100 ml, but the company was not interested in taking this directly to 10,000 liters. They wanted even this 100 liters to be developed by our university only. So when we are requested industry for funding for 100-liter size experimental setup, they were not interested. But had we shown this thing successfully in our lab, we have shown interest further high. So that's is substantial funding when it comes with respect to academia, and industries don't want to take risk in developing this, because this comes again in the as a part of a like basic research. So even to address these gaps, or like to pitch to the investors or the funding organizations, this techno-economic analysis is a good tool, because if we are presenting a firm, a reliable and a credible techno-economic analysis, even at this stage, saying that we are going to definitely like prove the success of our technology or product even at the scaled up level, then I think some of the industries or some of the funding organizations may be convinced. So in that case, also this is available, like helpful. But like the main idea was to inform was it can be done at any stage of development of project. So let's see what exactly is techno-economic analysis. It's just a like standard definition from Wikipedia. Like, but we know it based on the name itself. Like, it's the analysis of technical and economic aspects associated with a process, product, system, or a service. And the basic idea why the term techno-economy is the technology and economy should co-evolve together. When I say co-evolve, it means like co-develop. Like if we are developing some technology, we should not ignore economics. And obviously, in the field of economics or technology is important, they have to go together. Like. And often it is a multi-step methodology. Obviously, there are two terms, and then these two complicated terms have so many calculations and sub-terms involved in it, both technology as well as economics. So it's always a multi-step methodology, and it combines process modeling, engineering design, and economic evaluation when it comes to energy systems especially. So this is one thing, like techno-economic analysis. And when we deal with like a big project or like a bigger research study, it's always better to combine it with certain kind of cost benefit analysis or life cycle analysis and sustainability. And it goes well along with each of this analysis, because like life cycle, it will give us emissions or CO2 footprints. But if we have economics also in association with it, the study becomes like more uh, like what we say, more detailed. In fact, these together can be accounted for sustainability analysis, where we can account for some social and intangible factors also. And again, it can be applied for a new product or the existing products, or for comparison of the existing products. It can also be applied for out of the box idea, like here I have shown like something like a Bahubali flying ship. But yeah, technologically we can make anything happen. But if it is not going to fit into the economics of the present world, nobody is gonna buy it. So that's why this tool helps us to avoid, and or it helps us not to make some stupid decisions. So by here, when I say stupid decisions, it doesn't mean that we should not do fundamental research and just think about economics all the time. But as engineers, when we do applied research based on certain existing concepts, or we are trying to propose improvement in certain existing products, I think we should not ignore economics, because ultimately it will matter. Even if we develop the best ship in the world, if it is not going to fit into the economics, nobody is gonna accept it. Okay. So I'll take a small example, like a thinning a solar cell. A solar cell has something called like optical thickness, and there is some optimal thickness for which it is known to have the highest efficiency. If we are thinning a solar cell, what will happen? The material required for building this cell will reduce. It means the cost of the material will go down. But again, if the thickness is below this optimum thickness, the efficiency will also go down. So now how to make a decision whether to reduce the thickness of a solar cell or not? Because if cost and efficiency both are going down, the cost per watt actually increases. Because this material cost is just one factor of a total cost of the cell. In a system, ultimately what we are concerned about is cost per watt, because that's what the consumer is gonna pay. So this decision may be wrong. It may be correct if the objective of a producer is having less material cost, but it will be not preferred by customer. So techno-economic analysis helps to generate the trade-offs, and then we can identify the optimum parameters. Here, thickness is just one example, but similarly, while making decisions about changing the existing technology or process, these trade-offs between the like cost and different factors help us to identify the optimum set of parameters. Okay. So coming to the methodology. Right. So this is a simple like framework to show how techno-economics move. So first step is like the scoping, then model, evaluate, and fourth is the refining. So this is like the in generic. It is applicable in all the fields. Let's look at step-by-step methodology. Decide the after doing this analysis. It's also called as objective. What's the objective of doing the techno-economics? And for whom are we doing it? So that will be the scope of the objective. What are the resources available? What is the level at which our technology exists? So all this comes as a part of the scoping. Second step would be reference and scenario selection. This is important because we need to compare it with some existing case, or we need to like showcase it with some reference. Like if I am doing the techno-economic analysis of a solar power plant, unless it has a reference, say like geographic reference. Solar power plant in India will be different. Solar power plant in US will be different. So like India, US, so these geographical references are important. Scenarios. So this reference and scenario selection is the next step. It can be taken from the existing studies, from literature reviews. We can do it by consulting with industries or experts in that field to ask, okay, we are doing something like this. What should be your reference or scenario selection? So they can help us. Then third thing is system boundary, functional unit, and assumptions. So like as I said, it's a simple tool, but at times it may get complicated depending on the complexity of process and to what extent of details we want to go in. So just like a initial chemical plant I discussed, so there may be a plant with like 100 unit operations, and then it will be difficult. It will be very cumbersome work to get operating cost and capital cost for each of these 100 units and the people involved there. So it's always important to define a system boundary and the assumptions that we are going to conduct any techno-economic study. We will go through this steps again because like maybe after half of the lecture, I will be covering some case studies showing you how like we implemented techno-economic in certain case studies. The next step is creating a model or a spreadsheet. So by model, I mean it's a set of equations. It can be a framework or a set of mathematical equations for calculating different costs, and we can solve it in MATLAB or use an Excel spreadsheet also because this economic calculations are not very like complicated ones. It can be done easily in the Excel. And once the model is created or the spreadsheet is prepared, so next step is data collection or estimation. So this step can be done here also, but here it will be mainly data collection. But in this stage, if we are developing like some process models, we can estimate the data also. I'll show you in the case study how often a lot of data is available. We can get it from the literature, but many times we need to estimate or calculate the data based on certain assumptions or calculations. And then once the data is fed into the model, we can do some preliminary analysis. In fact, this can be the final analysis depending on the reliability of the data and appropriateness of the model. But once we get the feedback and validation from the experts in the field, or like the people involved in the base case, or if we are referring some base case from the literature, we need to validate it with that. And then we can present the final analysis results. This is like a typical framework or methodology for carrying out techno-economic analysis. I hope it's clear. This was like looks pretty simple, but yeah, in techno-economics, it's more of a hard work dealing with lots of calculations, making sure that we are not making any of the errors in any of the systems. Can be in softwares like Aspen Plus for material and energy balance streams. In fact, we can use other softwares also like HYSYS or CFD or MATLAB. If we have the process model ready for any energy system or a chemical plant, we can get the data from that model based on which the equipments could be sized and the economics could be estimated for the streams as well as the equipments whatever is going to use. And then all these things could be connected on our techno-economic analysis framework user interface. And for making decisions, we need to do a sensitivity analysis. This is a very important part of techno-economics because doing techno-economics will just give us one value for one system for one reference. Like, okay, this is the cost per unit product. It may be per unit energy, per unit mass, or per unit emission saving. But techno-economic sensitivity analysis will give us a range the range of solutions like a Pareto optimum covers amongst different parameters, where one of them would be the economic parameter. So if you look at the literature, there are so many studies on techno-economics, and some studies have got like very high citations. So this is for fuel production from algae. Then there is biomass fast pyrolysis, hybrid solar power. So even the title itself says techno-economic analysis, optimal design, and so all these studies which have got so high, I mean, so many citations. So they have done these things in detail, but followed the similar model. The framework was similar. The reason behind showing you this was like it's good, like we are doing our research in our daily like life and college life, that's fine, but if there is a chance to do the techno-economic analysis for the system, we should do it. And it's not like something like a low quality or low level research, because in fact it's needed in society, it's needed in industry. Ultimate implementation will depend on the techno-economic analysis of the solutions that we are proposing. Okay, so make sure you make this thing as a part of your research. So these are recent studies like on CO2 utilization for reducing climate change, and then PV modules for stationary battery deployment. So in fact, even the high impact sector journals prefer a good techno-economic analysis study. So these are important, and it's very like widely used and attracting a lot of interest, especially in the renewable energy sectors and the plant retrofits. And since when the sustainable development goals have been published by the United Nations in collaboration with all the countries, they have gained even more interest. But yes, it will all depend on how credible, reliable, and detailed analysis we present. And yeah, the second thing is the way of presentation. So obviously, these two things will be important. This is a typical framework or flow. I think I have covered this because these are the parts of the model. So what inputs we give, the mass and energy balance will come from the process model, which will give us how to size the design the process. Get total operating cost, and capital cost and operating cost will give us final economic evaluation, which will be the output. And the final economic evaluation will also take into account this the tax and depreciation related things. These are the economic parameters which need to be taken into account while doing the final economic calculation. So in this part, this portion is mainly the technical, but rest of all would be the economic analysis. This maintenance can come into technical. Labor, it will be partly technical, partly like the economic, but because we are dealing with all types of cost involved, so it's mainly the economic analysis. And because we are doing it for technology, whatever technical analysis was supposed to be done, we did it in this model, and equipment design or process design. So in fact, this is the core of the technical analysis, and rest all is the economic analysis, I would say. This is again the other way to represent the technology or the economic side of an energy system, where we have the experimental data to validate our process simulation models. This will use a lot of like thermodynamic properties would be there, but the objective of process simulation would be giving us material and energy streams by which we can size the equipment and calculate the cost. And obviously there will be a sensitivity analysis carried out. It's just the way of representation by different authors. But one thing is sure, it moves around those four steps like scoping, modeling, evaluation, and then refinement. So I'll just quickly go through some methods and formulae before starting with the case study. So there are different methods. Like as I said, there is no one fixed way or standard way of doing like techno-economic analysis. So one thing is like static cost benefit assessment, where we just compare the benefits and costs for 1 year. And we don't account into interest rate and inflation rate because over a year, nothing would have changed much. But when we go for a full project life, it needs to be taken into account. There is an annuity method. So what is annuity? Can someone tell me? It's written here. It's a payment at regular time intervals. So annuities is like the payments or premiums or installments. And it is based on the net benefit for each year of the project, because that's the only difference between static cost benefit and annuity method, because it spreads the initial investment over the entire project lifetime using the assumed interest rate. This is also called as discount rate sometimes. The inverse of annuity is also called as, this is annuity factor, and inverse of annuity factor is also called as capillary factor. The form of cash flow tables, where we make a tabular form for a project from start to end and write all the incoming costs and the out, like the benefits received, and then we can get the net cash flow. So this will be for each year. Then there is a most widely used method of net present value method, like NPV, because cash flow in 1 year will be different from the cash flow in other year, and the rate of interest will be different in that year. So we have to discount that cash flow with respect to present value and the future value. I won't be covering all those formulas in detail here, but yeah, these are different ways of doing calculations. And other thing is internal rate of return. It's also called as IRR. It is the rate or the discount at which NPV of a project will be 0. So let's just cover some formula here. So like as I said, net cash flow table. Suppose there is a project for 8 years, and initially for 2 years there was a lot of investment. So we have like something like negative 15,000 or anything. Then in the third year, suppose we attend like nothing was sold, but nothing was invested also. So there is no cost incurred. And next 4 or 5 years, there was some positive cash flow into the system. So the net cash flow will be the summation of all these cash flows, n equal to 1 to 8 from first to 8 years. And now this is the net cash flow. Based on the previous formula of net present value, we can calculate the net present value of a project. If we have to calculate it at the end of 8 years, we can use this formula, like where we do cash flow for each year, accounting for its present value by dividing it with this is a discount rate factor minus initial investment. Similarly, like if we calculate net present value for each year, also we can calculate. Just like net cash flow, we can calculate net present value for each year, and then just summation of all those net present value will give us total net present value. And if we equate this to 0, the I, or the rate that we are going to get, is called as internal rate of return. So most of the companies use this as a guideline to decide whether to invest in a project or not. So the criteria is, it should be very high, obviously, then only they can get maximum profit. But at least it should be greater than the minimum required rate of return. And if it is greater than the required rate of return, but if it is lower than the percentage cost of capital, then also the companies may not want to invest in that project, because it has to be a substantial amount also when it compares with the capital cost. So I think before we start a case study, here's a quiz. I'll give you like 5-10 minutes to just go through it and try solving it. And then we'll switch over to the case studies on like how do we implement whatever we have studied till now in a real case study of an energy system. If there are any queries till now, please feel free to ask me. So the first question is present value of cash inflow is equal to present value of cash outflow. What will be the net present value and is the project acceptable? Can someone please answer this for me?
Is the net present value 0 in that case?
Yeah, obviously it should. So when cash inflow is equal to cash outflow in a present, net present value will be zero.
Zero,
Yeah.
sir. Zero.
So is the project acceptable?
For the project to be acceptable, this is the minimum case, I think. So we need a higher net present value.
So for a project to be acceptable, the criteria
It should
is
be
net present
positive.
value
Yeah.
positive or equal to zero.
Yeah. So this is the minimum criteria.
Yeah. So project will be acceptable.
Yeah.
Because it is satisfying the minimum criteria. If it is less than zero, then obviously project is not acceptable because that person is never going to earn profit. Let's go to the second question. So if a company is planning to buy a reactor worth 37,500 and life is 10 years and company wants like the maximum desired payback is 4 years. They want their payback within 4 years. So should the company buy that reactor? So you have inflow and these are the outflows. So how will we calculate this?
The initial investment in the by or we can buy the
initial
reactor.
investment upon net
Net savings or net cash flow.
cash inflow or outflow?
Net cash flow, right? So inflow minus outflow.
So it will be net cash inflow. If we are
Yeah,
doing
net,
it inflow
net
minus
cash inflow.
outflow, so it will be net cash inflow. So this
Yes.
is like 45, 50, so it's 60,000. So inflow is 75. So net cash inflow will be 75 minus 60.
15,000.
So it will be 15. And then this is 37,500 is the investment.
Yes.
And it will be 15,000. So it's around 2.5. So this is less than 4. So the company will buy that reactor because it's
Yes.
getting the desired payback within 4 years. So in fact, even if this is like the 50,000, company will still buy it as long as this reactor cost is less than 60,000. Company will still buy it because at 60,000 the payback will be 4. This is the third last question. So if we assume a project which requires the initial investment of 20 and the discount or interest rate is 8%, and these are the cash flows like for 5 years. So how will we calculate the net present value? So if we make a table of it, like the year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we know these are, so please tell me if this is year 1 5,000, this is year 2 6,000. So all these are like the present values or the future values?
Those are future values.
Future values, right? Yeah, return also here, future cash values. So we will just write all the future values here. 5,000. Please excuse me for this handwriting because I am using the stylus on my laptop. 8,000. So all this, and then we have to convert it into the present value. Addition of all those, if we discount that present value, and summation of all that present value will give us, sorry, addition of all this present value will give us total present value, and then net present value will be addition of these all values minus initial investment, which is 20,000. So it will give us the net present value, something like this. Okay, so we have for 5 years, this was given to us. Rate of interest was given 8%. So we calculate all the present values for corresponding to these future values. And then sum of the present values was this summation of PV. Investment was this. So net present value will be subtraction of this. This gives the net present value of the project. It's for today. Sometimes we may need to forecast these values, or sometimes it may be like the discount rate. Yes. We So I think this covers just some basics of technology. There are so many like more formulas and calculations. I'll like if anyone needs some like reading material, please contact me and I will be happy to share with you at the end. So let's go with the case study. This will be more interesting. So this is our own paper on techno-economic and emissions evaluation of mobile in-woods biochar production. It's published in Energy Conversion and Management Journal recently, like 1 or 2 months back. So I'll explain like how did we do the techno-economics. Mainly the techno-economic portion I will try to cover. Emissions I will just touch up briefly. For a mobile in-woods biochar production. So first, like problem, we remember like the first thing we have to do is scoping. Like the framework, like design a problem, I mean, get a reference case and scenario. So this was the, let me explain you the idea, like what was the idea and who was involved in this project. So this project was sponsored by California Fire Department, Fire and Forestry Department. And there is a forest called Jackson Forest in California. And this forest manager wanted a solution to manage the slash in the forest after the timber harvesting is done, because it's a redwood forest. So redwood timber quality is very good, and they have a lot of timber harvesting plants there since like 100 years. But after these woodlots are shipped to the market, what is left in the forest is slash, and this forms a good feedstock for forest fire. And I think the whole world knows about California forest fires, one of the deadliest fires for like fires throughout all the years is happening there. Also, like recently there was a bushfire in Australia, which also like encapsulated a lot of forests within in that fire. So the idea was because I work on the area of biochar production, like using pyrolysis or torrefaction. So we propose mobile torrefaction units to convert this slash into biochar and then use that biochar within the forest boundary. Okay, so that was the idea, and because we had to do this for whom? For the forest manager, so that he or she can take a decision on how much to invest or whether to go for this solution or not. So we propose this solution, we'll tell them the techno-economic analysis, we'll tell them the benefits, we'll tell them the cost, and then they have to make a decision. So this was the scoping, like audience, idea, approach, and the boundary also. Then this reference scenario. So this is like one small timber harvest plan area in that Jackson Forest. Jackson Forest is a huge forest, like almost 50,000 acres. And this was one area of say like 400 acres. Okay, so this was our reference or a scenario like where I visited. So the first thing was understanding the system. So in fact, I visited there in person. We met the people, we met the forest manager, we actually saw those operations ourselves. Because I think this is important whenever we are trying to do some live techno-economic analysis for a existing or a proposed system. If we visit there in person, we get to know many more details which we may not think by sitting in the classroom or by sitting in our lab. So when I visited there in person and interacted with like these timber harvest operators and plant managers, they gave us the map. They explained us everything, like how the process is being carried out. So if this is that timber harvesting like boundary called and there are so many secondary landings. So these are the places where this slash is brought, or the wood logs after being cut, they are brought and stored there for a short time before being sent to the market. So when we visited there, these will form our processing sites. So secondary landing is a temporary landing. So after one rain or after one cut, the roads are blocked. So this is not accessible. So what we are left with the primary landings and helipads. So there were 5 primary landings and 3 helipads. So there were total 8 sites where we can like implement our intervention. So this was the data which we collected by discussion, by visits from their forest reports, where we covered. We included the data of all, like how much is harvested, how much slash is generated per year or per season, and then how many landings are there. Like as I said, 3 prime helipads, 5 primary landings. These are the areas: 0.21 hectare, 0.07, 0.0. So these are very small ones, so we can't do anything here. But these was the data we collected from the visits. For usual techno-economic analysis, if it is available in the literature, we can get it from the literature also. But make sure it has to be a reliable source. So once this data is gathered, it looks like more of a general reasonable data. We did our system boundary, or we can call it as a process flow. So what was the solution that we proposed? Converting slash to biochar using what? Torrefaction technology. Now, when we look at the actual plant, how will it look like? So in forest, they are harvesting timber. So products are wood logs and slash. But wood logs, they have very high market value. They are sold to market. What is left for us is slash. And our objective is to provide a solution for taking care of that slash. So this shaded area is not the part of my system boundary. I have marked my system boundaries here. So whatever techno-economic analysis we are going to present, it's within this system boundary. So our system boundary starts from, okay, this much slash is available on primary landing, this much slash is available on secondary landing, and this is the slash, by slash I mean residue, available on helipads. And then now we think over it and we propose a solution. So because we can't have a processing site on secondary landing, this slash has to be brought to helipad, or it has to be brought to primary landing. That's the problem of optimization, like where it will make sense to transport this slash either to helipads or primary landing. So we did carry out that, and then this is we propose 2 cases also, one with the dryer and one without dryer. So if you see, this slash is fed by a loader to a dryer. If the moisture content we assume average to be 40%, so we need a dryer before using another loader to feed it to a torrefaction unit. The products from this torrefaction unit is biochar, which will be loaded to the application like the spreader within the forest soil. Going to promote the forest regrowth. And then there was a gas coming out from the torrefaction unit, which will be combusted to provide heat for drying. Okay, we need some propane, some air. So this is like simple schematic where we presented mass and energy balance and the process flow. We don't need to do like Aspen or like MATLAB CFD based simulations here in such a simple unit. But the only caution we need to take is these numbers should be realistic. So this was the case with dryer, and for comparative basis, we presented a case without dryer. So if we feed this wet feedstock directly into the torrefaction unit, we get a tar gas, and if we burn the tar gas, just flare it, there will be some emissions. Okay, but these emissions will be like containing more. In this case, we are not using the energy content of this tar gas. We are combusting it, but the heat is not used for any purpose, so we are wasting a lot of heat. So this gives us again like more things to think techno-economically. Like, does it really make sense to have a good, well-designed combustor? How much energy exactly we have? How much is the requirement of dryer? So all these calculations we need to take into account. And when we do the techno-economics, it helps us to make a final decision whether to go for dryer or not to go for dryer. And the overall analysis will help us to know whether this is realistic or not. Okay, so this is again, this was for whole forest, this 5,800 ton, right? The entire forest. But we are considering the reference scenario was for one landing site or one helipad site, where this was the criteria. So now this we came up because the constraint we decided here was for our reactor. The maximum capacity that we can process in the reactor, which can be mobile, attached to the back of a tractor or a truck, and then move from forest to from landings to landings in the forest, was 2 tons per hour. So if we have a residence time of say like 15 minutes in the reactor, we don't need like a very huge reactor, but anything bigger than that would be not realistic when we say decentralized mobile units. Okay, so these are the system boundaries that we formulated, and now we did the floor area calculations because we know all those or not. So it was after this calculation that we came up with a decision not to consider secondary landing, because secondary landing area was not enough for placing this units. So every decision we make is made on certain basis. In case where the exact data is not available, we can always make logical or rationalistic assumptions. Like here, I have assumed height of slash fill is 15 feet, bulk density is 6. So it's not a fix. Somewhere it can be 20 feet, somewhere it can be 10 feet. So we just assume the average value because every heap or every pile of slash should be different. Similar with the bulk density, it's not going to be like the constant for each of the slash. So we take some average values, we take some standard assumptions for it. So like the first data which I showed was data collected. Now, because we are also doing research in the labs, we can estimate some data that we will be requiring for our technical analysis. So when I visited the forest, I took the sample of that slash, like 1 kg sample of slash from different parts, and then brought it to my lab, did some TGA or proximate and ultimate analysis to find the composition or the chemical composition of that feedstock, and then we process it in our reactor at the lab at MIT we process it in our reactor and find the value of the product. How much carbon, how much volatile matter, CHO, like what is the calorific value, what was the mass yield, what's the energy yield. So these are the things we did it ourselves. So this comes in the technical estimation of parameters. So it needs, if this data is available from literature, we can directly take it. If not, and if we have the facility to do it, we can extract or estimate a lot of data ourselves experimentally also. Right. So the reason behind showing you this was, it's when we say techno-economic analysis, it's not just putting some numbers and coming up with the feasibility analysis or saying, okay, now go for it. There are some basic concepts of we have to address, like the reference, the scenario analysis design, and most important, whether that data is reliable and applicable in the chosen reference. So that was the objective. So this is the lab scale reactor of 2 kg reactor where we did some experiments. This $4,500, and this costed us around $40,000. Okay, but now this is okay. We did it 10 times scale up, but for the forest we proposed a system of 2,000 kg per hour. So almost 100 times bigger than this. Now we can't do experiments on this and test it unless we have substantially high funding. And so here we use as simple as and some CFD simulations or like design basis calculations and come up with the system. So we haven't built this, and at present, the Jackson Forest, who is taking the decision of implementing this in the forest, they are building it, they are funding it. We are obviously will supervise the designing and commissioning of this and make sure it runs well. But yeah, it's the final decision maker who is going to invest in this. But the calculations of scale up, we have to give them the techno-economics for this system based on our experience with these two smaller systems. Okay, so that's how it goes. Like the scaling, that's why it says like techno-economics is very important for scaling up an idea or scaling up a technology. So these are some like equations or models that we used. Like this is the pretty known one, like capacity and cost relation. The scaling factor, in literature we can find it for biomass equipment. It may vary from 0.6 to sometimes 0.75 also. So in literature we may get some values, but if we go and meet some industrial manufacturers of biomass pyrolyzers or gasifiers, they would be able to give us exact value. And if we know the reference or scenario where we are implementing this, we can take that value then. Okay. Then we calculated annualized capital cost using the formula we discussed for net present value. Then, because these operations were not going to be there for 365 days, so we accounted it for the adjusted capital cost based on the number of days of operation. For two cases, what will be the total number of days of operation, and accordingly we adjusted the capital cost. Then we find out the total cost will be the addition of annualized, like the adjusted capital and operating cost. So operating cost, it just looks OC here, but it has like all number of details. And then finally we presented the break-even cost, because the investor or decision maker, he doesn't understand, he or she doesn't understand all these things what we did. They just wanted the break-even cost. Okay, at what cost I am going to get my money back, or at what cost it is preferred. So because we are making biochar, we did it per ton of biochar, but again, different biochars will have different percentages of carbon. So based on the process. So if I do very intensive process, high temperature, there will be like 90% carbon. If I do low temperature process, there may be like 50% carbon in biochar. Both are biochars. In mass, maybe both are same, but in quality, they are substantially different. So per unit fixed carbon is a better unit of representation, because it will give us more universality, or more, it will apply to broader audience. So that's why defining a functional unit is also very important. So these are some results. I won't go through but yeah, these are the capital costs for all the equipment, and we have to make sure we give the references for each of these. Often, we can, if it's a tractor or a truck from some company, you can in fact just call them if you are not getting the value from their website, and they would be happy to give the exact price. Similarly, for operating cost, because we interacted with the operations manager there who was handling the labor on the timber harvesting processing site, so they told us all these costs. So it was like sort of like more reliable data, and then we applied our model and calculated the break-even cost, which came out to be this much when it's per ton carbon. And as I informed earlier, it was not just techno-economic, it was techno-economics and emissions analysis. So we calculated all the CO2 emission benefits that we would get after sequestering this biochar into the soil. And based on that, the total GHG emission benefits came out to be 85 and 18. So this was the final value. So now, because it's like a public owned or private owned forest, and they really don't want to make profit or anything, but what they wanted, they are investing to get rid of CO2 like emission benefits. So if the CO2 emission benefits are valued at $85 to $120 per ton of CO2, at these values they will reach break-even. And these values are really like low compared to the very optimized ways of capturing CO2. So that's what they were more interested in. Then this is just a way of representation, like how do we represent different kinds of costs. These were for the emissions. I just skip it. Okay, and then we did some sensitivity analysis on like what was the more crucial parameters. So when we do sensitivity analysis, we have to select appropriate parameters or appropriate variables. Obviously, it's a mathematical model. If we change one thing, other things gonna change. But this doesn't mean that we just keep on changing all the variables and then present the analysis. So whatever is the most important technical parameter, based on variation of that parameter, we should be able to comment on the variations in capital and operating costs, or like here the break-even cost in terms of CO2. So we varied number of reactors, the biochar yield, because this is in our hand. If we change the experimental conditions, the biochar yield will change. Similarly, the biochar application rate. This is also in our hand, because even in one forest, soil in different parts may be different, because after a clear cut, the soil texture changes. So some soil may need high biochar application, some soils may need low biochar application. So that's why we need to give this sensitivity analysis ranges, so that the investors can make a decision whether to go for this system or not. And then we finally present the bigger picture, because we did it for one THP area, timber harvesting plan area of 400 acres. There were almost 50 such sites in that 40,000 acre forest. So based on this, some concrete analysis, we presented our findings to them that if they do it for entire forest, which has this much of slash, they can enjoy the benefits of CO2 up to this. Okay, and then the value come out to be similar, because it's the same reference or base case. The range was here, 80 to 120 tons dollar per ton CO2. So if this is the value given by government for per ton CO2 capture, then this forest manager will reach break even at this cost. So this was the analysis we did, and that is how we applied the concepts of techno-economics. Like we started with scoping, referencing, designing scenarios, taking two cases with dryer, without dryer for comparison. Then did techno-economic like capital cost, operating cost, emissions calculation, and then did sensitivity analysis by identifying the most important variables and then varying it over a range. Okay, so this was, if any questions, please let me know. Or should we go to the next case study?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So my question is regarding this your initial lab scale study of 2 kg per hour, then it is 20 kg per hour, right? So then you are scaling it up to 2000 kg per hour. So in between it is purely based on modeling study, like the scaling up study.
Yes, it was purely based on the modeling study, but we also met not a torrefaction person, but a gasifier person who did it similar, like for his system, like for 20 kg per hour gasifier to 2000 kg per hour gasifier. So we had some idea, okay, how does this work out in terms of cost? So yeah, it was purely modeling study, but there were some feedbacks and re-evaluations involved in it, just to establish the credibility. Okay, what we are presenting here is correct. Okay, I think we just have, yeah, please.
Yeah, so from 2 to 20, so 20 kg, is it showing an improvement compared to 2 kg, or what is the relation in that 2 to
Yes,
20?
yes. So we did from 2 to 20 also, we did the techno-economic analysis, but now those costs are not like the real world plant cost. No, it's a laboratory setup. So at lab scale, economics won't work, because for a 20 kg hour plant, we need to set up very high safety level equipment, like a big fume board, big exhaust, more alarms, when it comes to a lab facility in a university. So so that's why those numbers are like very like substantially high. Actually, in reality, that system should have cost us $10,000 or $15,000, but it costed us $40,000 because it was in a university setup. I just gave that example that okay, we started our work from a smaller scale, then we went up slightly higher scale, but beyond a point we can't go up doing experiments. So we have to employ these modeling based approaches. But when it comes to techno-economic, in addition to establishing or using these modeling based approaches, we should go out of the building, talk to industrial fabricators or users who are dealing with these equipments and get our calculations verified by them. That will improve the estimate that we are. So second was this we conducted 6 years back for cost benefit analysis of different hydrogen production technologies. So like earlier it was just one system, one problem, right, or one objective. Now this is like a comparative analysis. So we can apply techno-economics even for comparing different technologies. Now here also the source of data can be anything from literature, from surveys, from reports, from okay, and we can use any kind of approaches or methodology. I use here like simple TEA for cost and AHP for benefits, because some of the benefits are intangible, right? We can't quantify it. And AHP is analytic hierarchy process. It's a multi-criteria decision-making method which helps us to quantify even the qualitative criteria. So I'll talk about it. So I'll just skip this. So these were like 6 processes for producing hydrogen, like say steam methane reforming, coal gasification, partial oxidation, biomass gasification. Then electrolysis, where different sources will be used to provide electricity, and chemical heating by water splitting. So these are simple block diagrams for each of these processes, but this is not just a block diagram. This is important because it shows the system boundary. Okay, so see, like the actual plant may not look like this. There will be so many things like from walls to compressors to like other some units for storage and supply, cylinder, pressure. So I'm not taking all those things into account. This was like a more of a research study for comparative analysis. So we specified the system boundary and we tried to be consistent while specifying that system boundary for all processes so that it's unbiased. Okay. So please remember, whenever you define a system boundary in a comparative analysis, make a system boundary such a way that it's not biased towards one of the technologies. So we involved all the main components involved in the hydrogen production. And because all these are very well established process, a lot of data was available in the literature. And this was the work I did in my PhD. So at that stage, I really had no clue that, okay, I should have even talked to the actual hydrogen manufacturers or industrialists in the world and get it verified. So that's how, like, so even I'm learning like new things or new ways as the time is passing. But I wanted to show like how technoeconomics can be used for comparative analysis, and that's why we are covering this case study. Again, the formulas were like similar and quite straightforward, but because of that present value and future value for equipment cost, often we use these indexes. So it's here I had used chemical engineering plant cost index because to find the present capital cost from the known cost in some other year. Similarly, for operating cost, because it deals with a lot of manpower and labor, it's best to use consumer price index to get the operating cost. And this capacity formula and equivalent annual cost was the parameter in which we represented all the cost. Okay, this capital recovery factor or the reciprocal of annuity factor. And then we calculated benefits using AHP. So this thing was for capital and operating costs associated for each of the processes, and for benefits, objective was comparison. So this criteria we choose very wisely by discussing with all the faculties in my department. So I tried to list this criteria after going through literature review, but then just to know if they are correct, I interacted with all the like concerned faculties in the department and got their views. And then that's how I finalized this literature review and like famous example of leader. So if suppose there is Tom, Dick and Harry and the objective is choosing the best leader, so it's the decision maker. So in this study of hydrogen, I was playing the role of a decision maker, let's say, because I was one who was comparing for my peers, for my research counterparts who will be benefited by my study. So it was me who decided the criteria, but again, it can't be random. It has to be associated with the traits that we are looking for in a leader or a product. So experience, education, charisma, age, and then there were three options. So whoever is best in all of them, net, after synthesis, whoever is the best in all the categories overall will be the best leader. So this is a simple way where AHP can be used to quantify even the non-quantifiable or like qualitative criteria based on the weightages and importance given by the interviews or data and literature review. Okay, so again, there also we compared two cases, and for all these five criteria, we prepare pairwise comparison matrix. So each criteria is equally important with respect to itself, right? That's why this diagonal matrix is one. Now, when I say raw material is 2, so it's like 2 times important than this, or we can say on the scale of 1 to 9 proposed by the founder of AHP. If we say 9 is most important, 1 is least important, accordingly we give the weightages. And then we solve this pairwise comparison matrices using the matrix or eigenvalue method and get the final weights. So just like we get the weights for each of the criteria, next step is we have 8 alternatives, right? So we have to compare 8 alternatives for each of these criteria. So there will be 5 matrices, 8 by 8, 5 matrices. And this was the year. Different costs were got obtained from different year for different capacities. So we formed the basis. Okay, this is the capacity of the plant. This is the year. Now for this basis, we modified all those estimates and then normalized it. So this is final, like this is the cost side. Okay, now I'll come back to HP for the benefit side. So benefits, we collected data as much we could get from the literature, and then some data I collected by interviewing the faculties. And then, as I said, let's say this is an example of, like, say, energy efficiency. These are the efficiencies from the literature for these 8 processes. Now, if I make a pairwise comparison matrix for efficiency, again it will be similar. Diagonal will be 1, and the questions we ask or with the survey sheet we give will be like these 8 technologies, and we'll ask people to rank them from 1 to 8 or 1 to 9 for the efficiency. Or we can, if we have the numerical value from the literature, we don't need to ask people or do survey. We can just get it from these numbers, what will be the best thing. So here in this scale, number 1 is the highest efficiency one. So 77 is 1. So 21, the lowest efficiency, is getting the 8. Okay, so we can define like in 1 to 9, which is best, which is most important, which is low, and accordingly we can calculate. So just like for energy efficiency, for other 4 criteria also, we will develop these 5 these matrices of 8 by 8 and get the final weights. Then we will synthesize. So for each of these criteria, we get the weight for each of this technology, and then we just by some product, we can get the final scores. So this is benefits. Earlier we had calculated cost. So now we have normalized equivalent cost. We have benefits, so we can plot it. Cost versus benefit curve, and all these 8 technologies will be placed here, and based on the cluster we can select, or a decision maker can see if you need more benefits, go for wind electrolysis or the renewable one, and if you have like lower cost, go for the fossil, but the benefits will be low. Okay, so this is just a framework we did, and to make it a sound technical study, I used multiple versions of AHP and did sensitivity analysis and calculated it based on the preferences. And to keep it non-biased, we developed 2 cases. So case 1 was where we gave very high preference to the environmental criteria, and case 2 was where each criteria is equally important. Okay, so if you see here, when the environmental criteria are important, you see hydro, wind. So these are the best technologies. But when we give equal importance to all the things, the fossil-based, like steam methane reforming, is the best process to make hydrogen. Okay, so that's how it was. So sensitivity analysis, there is no control. We can go anyhow, and the methods we can use multiple ones. Okay, so there are some more case studies. I think you can go through. I won't be covering this. There are some really good studies in literature on different types of analysis where they use some simulation software for getting the data and then do techno-economics. But most important is this feedback thing or the validation thing. Okay, so I think we are towards the end. So I'll just summarize. Techno-economic analysis, it helps to make decisions based on the technical and economic aspects. It is carried out at any stage for a single or for single, combine it with other kinds of analysis. Okay, and at present when people are asking you to correlate your research to sustainable development goals, just to show that whatever research we are doing is high impact research. This finds very helpful. In fact, even if we are doing just some experimental research, it's good to have a small techno-economic analysis towards the end to show the physical significance of the project wherever it is possible. Then there are so many studies coming up which are using PEA, but there are some which are developing new integrated PEA frameworks. One of them is integrated assessment models. This is one like upcoming area where people are doing a lot of research in developing like machine learning tools or some new frameworks for this kind of integrated assessment modeling. And what do we look into a good techno-economic study? First thing is obviously details, clarity, reliability. This is important. And if something is reliable, in fact, not only the research world, but industrialists and investors and startup people will also look at your techno-economic analysis as a example or as a base case. And then applicability and impact. This goes very high when we link our techno-economics with life cycle or sustainability analysis or like cost benefit analysis, and then validity. If it is validated, it's well and good, like validated by some experimental results, like all whatever data we could validate ourselves, we should be able to validate. With this, I think I thank you all and thank you so much. If there are any queries, please feel free to ask.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Sir, can we do AHP modeling with policy? Means we want to comparison between two policies, so we can apply AHP on there?
Yes. Actually, policy is some area where it's difficult to quantify a lot of parameters. So
Yes,
what
sir.
you can do is those are intangible criteria or parameters. But if you are supposed to compare just two things, we are underutilizing the potential of AHP. Okay, but if the two things are really complicated, we really don't know, okay, which one is best based on the list of parameters or criteria. If there are so many criteria, then it's better to use AHP. It's fine.
Okay. So in policy case is more difficult to quantify, means every policy have different advantage, disadvantage.
Yes, so based on your field, I think there is a minimum number of responses that you need to cover, because
Okay.
if you are able to quantify it or give weightages based on literature review, it's fine. But if there is not enough literature, not even like say 20-25 papers, then it's better to contact at least 30 people, make a questionnaire, get their responses, and then changing those responses into crisp numbers. That's
Okay.
one way.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you, sir.
So if there are any queries, please ask me. And I'm really sorry for this handwriting and like touch screen thing. It's okay. I hope you got what I wanted to convey.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sona. Like it was a very nice lecture, and shared like, your personal experience. You are like how you have been learning the TEA concepts over these so many years, and it was so beneficial for all the participants, I believe. So I believe in the interest of time, we should end our session, and I can request all the participants to mail their questions to you, and I believe you would be
Sure.
more than happy to answer them. So with this, we end today's session, and we'll begin our last session at 11:30 a.m. and that's after half an hour. So hope to meet you again. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. If anyone is still online and want to ask me anything, please feel free to ask. I am here for another 10 minutes.
Okay, and also Professor Sonal has shared his email ID in the chat box in case anyone is interested.
Yeah.